Let's talk about various strategies that you can do to stop overeating, or should we say, stop eating like a pig, like this. So there's just a few problems with overeating. Of course, you have overeating of the wrong foods and overeating of just healthy foods, right? Which then can create a big strain on your digestive system. Being satisfied is a very subjective thing, and it's difficult because sometimes the food that they're eating is not satisfying them for certain reasons, and we're going to talk about that. So what is the right amount to eat so you don't overdo it? That's the big question. Now in Okinawa, they have a very good principle that they follow. Of course, we're talking about the traditional people, probably not the current people that are kind of more modern. But traditionally, they eat until they're about 80% full. I think that gives some nice leeway there. And I like that principle if you can do it. So ultimately, the best thing you can do for this problem is to not have an appetite and not have any cravings, right? If you can do that, then everything's going to be easier. And of course, the way to do that is to get on the healthy version of keto, okay, where you're doing high quality, nutrient dense foods that's satisfying you on one end. And then also you're doing low carbs, which will greatly reduce the hunger in between eating. And also when you're doing intermittent fasting, your stomach does change because you're not eating so frequently. And the amount of food that you eat is going to be less because you can't just fit all that food in there like you did before, especially if you're doing things like eating one meal a day. You're just not going to be able to cram that much food. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. And so you're not going to keep doing it. Typically, when you're craving certain foods, that could just be a low blood sugar situation where you're trying to maintain this level of glucose or this storage of glucose in your liver called glycogen. And so you have to constantly eat something more on the carbohydrate side. But you also have people that crave bread. Could mean that they might need more B vitamins. People that crave just sugar, it could potentially mean that they need more potassium, possibly, probably not, but it could be. Or if you crave chocolate, that could mean that you need more magnesium. And of course, if you're craving dirt, that classically means that you need more iron. Or even if you crave dairy, it could mean that you need more calcium. I intuitively can just know what to eat. If I go to a grocery store, okay, or on a given day before I eat, I can pretty much know what my body needs more of. And because I'm in keto, and for some reason, I can just gravitate to certain foods more than other foods. Like I'll need a lot more celery. Other times I'll need more protein. So you do want to get to a point where you're really in tune with your own body. But the worst question you can ever ask is, what is my body in the mood for today? Popcorn, pizza, chips, cookies. Don't ever ask that question, okay? A better question would be, what can I eat that's truly going to make my body healthier? But of course, you really have to be keto adapted or fat adapted to ask the question. Or you're just constantly running into this low energy, low sugar, blood sugar situation. There is actually, and I've learned this just recently, there are certain genes that you can have an issue with that can cause you to have more of a sweet tooth, and that can cause you to not be able to stop eating certain things when you start eating certain things. And that is one of my problems. If I start eating sugar, I can't stop. I will just eat massive amounts. The same thing with carbohydrates. So I just don't start. But I think the worst factor to this topic is restaurants, especially the all-you-can-eat buffets, right? Where you really want to get your money's worth and you keep going back and back. And it's like, why do we have to stuff our body with that much food? It's just insane. There are certain foods, especially in America, that give you much larger portions than you really need, okay? Huge steaks, like 12-ounce steaks. Do you really need to eat that much protein? And then, of course, the pasta. And then, of course, the dessert, right? I have found in Europe, their serving sizes are much less. There are certain restaurants that will have these small portions, but it'll be many of those. So in one restaurant, and I'm not kidding, they gave us 11 of these these plates. Okay. It was small, but after the seventh meal, I was just hoping it was going to be done because it was not pleasurable. It was just sampling after sampling after sampling. So I think one really good tip is just to really determine how much food you're going to eat. And then the next day, you end up with blood sugar problems because you raised your insulin up. Okay. And now you're craving the wrong thing. And then you also have the factor that you must eat everything on your plate because people are starving in other places of the world. And we just have to just finish our plate. And so if that's the case, just keep your portions on the smaller side. So there are hormones that increase your appetite, make you hungry, and there's hormones that make you full, okay, or satisfied. And the hormones that make you hungry, we'll talk about that first, include ghrelin, insulin, and cortisol, the stress hormone. So ghrelin, that hunger hormone, is triggered by various things. One would be the lack of sleep, right? I know with myself, if I don't get enough sleep, I definitely have more of an appetite. Stress is another factor. When you're under stress, you're going to crave more food. And also, when you eat refined carbohydrates, that's going to tend to lack those factors that are supposed to satisfy you. And eating refined carbohydrates can also stimulate that hormone. But when someone's actually stressed, they're really not in the present. And especially if they're in a social environment where they'll just do things that they don't normally do because you're not really in the present. They get into this certain mode and they just start eating and they really don't differentiate what they're eating. And then next thing you know, you just are completely off your plan. Now with insulin, of course, that is another hormone that stimulates hunger. Doesn't matter what you're eating. Will spike insulin, which will make you more hungry about an hour and a half later, especially if you're doing those snacks. Okay. Of course, carbohydrates and also larger amounts of protein and MSG can also increase insulin and trigger hunger. And of course, there's cortisol. And if you're more stressed, you're going to eat more of certain things and the wrong things. And also, it's interesting, people that are on a diet, they tend to get off sugar, but sometimes they'll have artificial sweeteners. Well, artificial sweeteners can also stimulate hunger, which is interesting because it can potentially stimulate insulin. Now, other things that can stimulate appetite, a lack of bile in your gallbladder. Let's say, for example, you have gallstones, which means you're lacking bile, that thing that helps you dissolve fat and extract fat-soluble vitamins from your meal. Let's say you had the gallbladder removed, okay? Chances are you're going to be lacking bile, or any type of problem with the liver, or tightness underneath the right rib cage, some pain that goes on the right side. All those are subtle indicators that you are deficient in bile. And so if you're not absorbing certain fats, that can keep you from being satisfied. You will feel full, but you won't be satisfied. So that will trigger to eat more. And by the way to handle that is just to take bile salts after the meal. Take one, and that will help. Being on a low-fat diet, okay, can definitely keep your hunger up. Fat is very satisfying. I do recommend being on the ketogenic diet to eat more fat, especially after the meal, okay? And then that way you can fast longer and that can help you. Now, junk food, okay, especially these refined carbohydrates at any grocery store, you'll have all these flavored chips, which are loaded with chemicals, incredible flavors and spices, but no real nutrients behind it. And you'll just keep tasting these and you'll just keep, oh boy, these are delicious, but there's no satisfaction. So you can eat the whole thing. Of course, manufacturing companies do this on purpose. So you know that. But if I buy a bag of Doritos, I cannot just have one, right? I'll eat the whole darn thing. And then I want another one and another one. So you just have to avoid those areas on the grocery store or at some other place that they would sell them. Another reason why people will overeat is to get energy because they're tired. They will satisfy this tired feeling. They tend to reach for more food to replace this fatigue to hopefully get more energy, okay? So that's another reason why people will eat certain foods. Of course, that food that they just ate or overate, they're going to be tired shortly after that. You also have people eating out of boredom. Boy, it's a big one. You know, you sit around the house and you just are bored, so you eat. You really don't have any reason. You're not hungry. You just like to chew on chips, not necessarily celery, but something crunchy like nuts, like pistachio or something like that. Now, if someone's pregnant and they're craving certain things, hopefully they're on the ketogenic diet, that could definitely mean that the baby needs certain things. So just make sure you have something nutrient dense. And also then some people will eat because they're in pain as some way to actually get them out of pain, right? So there's a lot of reasons why people will eat. Now let's talk about the other hormone called leptin that is supposed to satisfy you. So if leptin is too low, okay, you can also be hungry. And people that are overweight, people that have insulin resistance, people that have metabolic syndrome, people that have diabetes, have low levels of leptin. Okay. So they're going to be hungrier versus all of those people that I just mentioned are going to have higher amounts of insulin. So hormonally, things are against them and it's going to be more difficult. If you don't have enough of that leptin, you're not going to be satisfied too well. So let's talk about those things that can increase leptin other than losing weight, fixing your insulin resistance, and getting rid of your diabetes. A good night's rest can help you raise your leptin. Lowering stress can help you. Routine, regular exercise or physical activity can help increase leptin. Adding more fiber can help you increase leptin. And I'm not talking about these functional food fibers, these new ones. I'm talking about the actual vegetables. Another thing that can increase leptin is fasting, right? Now, at first, when you do fasting, you're going to be hungry, but then your body's going to convert over, you're going to burn fat. And so now you're doing intermittent fasting, and now your appetite goes away, and your leptin can start to reverse and start to be increased, okay? And this is the best indicator to know that you're burning fat, okay, that you're in ketosis, is that you lose the appetite. And of course, if you lose the appetite, your leptin is going to be higher. Omega-3 fatty acids can help increase leptin. Green tea can help increase leptin. Probiotics in fermented foods with the microbial density can help increase leptin and make you more satisfied. Just nutrient dense foods in general can make you more satisfied. Now, the research on this is sketchy, but I know for a fact, I live on a farm. When I consume the eggs from my chickens, boy, I am satisfied compared to other eggs when I consume the meat from my own farm. Super satisfying. So what's causing that? Is it the fat? Is it the protein? Is it the carbs? No, it's the nutrients. It's nutrient dense. So most people, Americans especially, are just eating empty calories, and that is going to keep them eating over and over and just make them always hungry, which is terrible if you're trying to do any type of diet or trying to achieve any type of health goal. So to get out of this pattern of overeating, you want to get on the healthy version of keto and definitely do intermittent fasting. I also recommend that you eat your vegetables first, okay? And that way, at least you can get a lot of really low calorie fiber and nutrients first. And that's going to help definitely just with feeling full as you eat the next meal versus the protein, which tends not to turn off that hunger as much. So eat your vegetables first. Also, before you eat, determine what you're going to eat and how much you're going to eat. And then that way you can control what you eat. And we're talking about moderate amounts of protein, between 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 ounces of protein. If you're going to do salad, that's 7 to 10 cups. But of course, if you're doing 2 meals, right, you would cut that in half. It's doable. And then, of course, the fat that comes with that protein. Now, I also add extra fat, like whether it's going to be pecans or macadamia nuts, or maybe an avocado, olive oil, maybe a keto dessert. I'll add more butter to the meal. The other thing to do to kind of keep you conscious and in the moment, okay, is to chew your food longer, right? So many people, I've watched them eat and they just like inhale the food, and it's like there's a race. So chew your food thoroughly before you eat. Okay, that'll help your digestion. And then I think the restaurants, they're a bit dangerous. If you don't go to the right restaurant, don't go to all-you-can-eat buffets. Make sure that you kind of stay in control of your meal at a restaurant. You know, they bring you all these breads and hors d'oeuvres. So just be really conscious of what you're putting in your mouth and the size of those foods at the restaurants, especially if you're doing them frequently. So this topic was all about not overeating, but I think it's very important to know what to eat, okay? what meal would be the healthiest meal. And I put that video up right here. Check it out.